Warren was checking the seals on his habitat door for the third time when the dust storm hit Redstone Mesa. The sky turned the color of rust, and wind screamed across the desert colony. He lived on the edge of the settlement, far from the central hub where most colonists gathered. Out here, storms were dangerous. They could strip paint off metal and bury equipment in hours. He stepped back from the window and headed toward the kitchen. His shift at the terraforming station had been long, and all he wanted was a hot meal and sleep. The habitat creaked as wind battered the walls. Warren had lived through dozens of these storms. They were routine now, almost boring. Then he heard it. A soft thump against the outer door. Warren froze, listening. The wind howled, but there it was again. Another thump, weaker this time. He frowned. Debris, probably. Sometimes equipment broke loose during storms and tumbled across the colony. But the sound came a third time, and something about it felt wrong. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Almost like knocking. Warren grabbed his respirator from its hook and moved to the airlock. Protocol said to never open doors during a storm, but something in his gut told him this was different. He sealed the respirator over his face and cycled the first door open. Red dust exploded into the small chamber, and the wind tried to rip the door from his hands. He squinted into the chaos, seeing nothing but swirling sand. Then he looked down. A figure lay crumpled against his doorframe. One arm was raised as if it had been knocking before falling. Warren's breath caught. The shape was human-like but wrong. Too tall. Too thin. The skin visible through torn clothing had a strange, translucent quality that caught his habitat lights. It shimmered like frosted glass. Not human. Alien. Warren's first instinct screamed at him to close the door. Call security. Report this. But the figure moved slightly and he saw the face. Sunken cheeks. Cracked, bleeding lips. Eyes closed against the sand. Whoever this was, they were dying right now at his door. His hands moved before his mind finished debating. Warren hooked his arms under the figure's shoulders and pulled. They were lighter than expected, as if their bones weighed nothing. The storm fought him for the body, wind trying to drag them both outside. Warren planted his feet and hauled backward, muscles straining. The figure slid into the airlock and Warren slammed the outer door shut. The pressure cycle began. Warren leaned against the wall, breathing hard. In the steadier light, he got his first real look at what he had brought inside. Female, he thought, though he could not be sure. Her skin had a crystalline structure beneath the surface, like patterns of ice on a window. Her hair fell in pale strands that shimmered even under the harsh lights. She wore what might once have been a jumpsuit, now shredded and stained beyond recognition. But it was her thinness that struck him hardest. Warren had seen starvation before, back on Earth during the bad years. This was worse. Her wrists were barely thicker than sticks, and her ribs showed through the torn fabric. Her breathing came in tiny, desperate gasps. The inner door opened. Warren dragged her through into the main habitat and lowered her near the heater. She did not wake even when her head touched the floor. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint and irregular, but there. Warren ran to his storage unit and grabbed the medical kit. His hands shook as he pulled out the scanner and passed it over her body. The device beeped in confusion, displaying error messages. Wrong biology. Of course it could not read her. He tossed it aside and went with basics. He checked for obvious injuries, finding cuts and bruises covering her arms and legs. He cleaned them with antiseptic and wrapped the worst ones with bandages. When the antiseptic touched a deep gash on her arm, she stirred. Her eyes snapped open, huge and alien, with pupils that expanded instantly in the light. She made a sound like breaking glass and tried to scramble away from him. Her limbs tangled, too weak to coordinate. She fell back, gasping. Warren raised his hands and moved back quickly. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. She stared at him, chest heaving. Then she spoke in a language that sounded like wind chimes mixed with clicking sounds. Her voice was hoarse and cracking. When Warren said nothing, she tried again, more urgent this time. She pointed at the door, then at herself. I don't understand, Warren said slowly. He pointed at himself. Warren. My name is Warren. He gestured around the room. Safe. You're safe here. The alien woman's eyes darted everywhere, looking for escape routes. She tried to stand and collapsed immediately. Her legs simply gave out and she fell hard. She made a pained sound that needed no translation. Warren moved slowly, keeping his hands visible. He went to the kitchen and grabbed a ration bar and water bottle. Then he sat down on the floor, several feet away from her. He opened the ration bar, took a small bite himself, then held it out. Food, he said. You need this. She stared at the bar like it might explode. Her crystalline skin seemed duller now, and Warren wondered if it changed with her emotions. She was terrified. Of course she was. A stranger had dragged her into an unknown place. She had no reason to trust him. "I know," Warren said quietly, still holding out the food. "I know you're scared. But you were dying out there. Please." Maybe his tone helped. Maybe hunger won. The alien woman reached out with a trembling hand and took the bar. She sniffed it carefully, turning it over in her hands. Then she took the smallest possible bite. Her eyes widened. She took another bite, larger this time. Suddenly she was tearing into it, eating like she had not seen food in weeks. Warren's chest tightened watching her. When the bar vanished, she looked at him with desperate hope. He offered the water bottle, showing her how to twist the cap. She drank half in seconds, then forced herself to stop, clutching the rest like treasure. Warren reached for another ration bar. "More?" The alien woman nodded. At least it looked like a nod. She took the second bar more carefully this time, eating in controlled bites. Some of the panic left her posture. Her skin brightened slightly, throwing tiny rainbow patterns on the walls. When she finished eating, she looked at Warren for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her hand over her chest and spoke a single word that sounded like Kyra. Warren smiled and repeated the gesture. "Warren." She tried the name, her voice struggling with the sounds. "Warren." Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside, something fragile and important had just begun. Warren woke the next morning to find Kyra sitting upright against the wall, watching him with those large alien eyes. He had given her blankets the night before and left her near the heater. She had not moved from that spot. When he stirred, she tensed like a cornered animal. He raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Morning," he said gently. "Are you hungry?" She did not understand the words, but she understood his tone. Warren went to the kitchen and prepared 2 ration bars and water. He ate his breakfast on the floor across from her, making sure she saw him eating the same food. Trust had to be built slowly. After watching him for several minutes, Kyra accepted her portion and ate carefully, not with the desperation of last night but with focus. Warren noticed she studied everything. Her eyes tracked his movements around the habitat. She examined the walls, the equipment, the lights overhead. She was learning, cataloging, trying to understand where she was. After breakfast, Warren tried pointing at objects and naming them. "Door," he said, pointing. "Window." "Chair." "Water." Kyra watched but did not repeat the words. Instead, she pointed at the water bottle and made a sound like flowing liquid. Then she pointed at the light fixture and made a sound like a high musical note. Warren realized she was teaching him her language at the same time. He tried to repeat her word for water, mangling the pronunciation. Kyra's expression shifted, and Warren thought she might be amused. She repeated the word slowly and he tried again. Better this time. They spent the morning like this, trading words and gestures. Warren learned that Kyra could make sounds humans could not, her voice capable of tones and harmonics his throat could never match. But they found common ground with simple words. Yes and no. Good and bad. Safe and danger. On the second day, Warren brought out his data pad and stylus. He drew a simple stick figure and pointed at himself. Kyra understood immediately. She took the pad and drew her own figure, taller and thinner, with the crystalline skin texture shown as small lines. Then she drew more figures like herself. A crowd of them. She drew what looked like buildings, simple structures clustered together. Home, Warren thought. She was showing him her home. Kyra's hand moved faster now. She drew larger figures, blocky and aggressive looking. These new figures carried what could only be weapons. She drew them surrounding the crystalline people. Then she started crossing out the crystalline figures one by one, her strokes becoming harsh and angry. Warren felt cold understanding settle over him. "War," he said quietly. "Someone attacked your people." Kyra looked at him, and even without sharing a language, he saw the grief in her eyes. She drew more scenes. Her people running. Scattered. Some falling and not rising. She drew herself among them, fleeing across rough terrain. Then she drew what looked like a ship. She crossed it out. Then another. Also crossed out. She had tried to escape multiple times and failed. Warren took the pad gently and drew Redstone Mesa, showing the colony buildings and the desert around them. He drew his habitat on the edge, then drew her inside it. He circled them both and wrote the word safe in large letters. Kyra stared at the image for a long time. Then she looked up at him, and her crystalline skin flickered with colors he had not seen before. Warmer colors. Hope, maybe. Over the following days, their communication grew more sophisticated. Warren learned that Kyra's people were called the Karathi. They came from a desert world not unlike this one, which explained why she had survived as long as she did in the storm. The Karathi were peaceful, focused on art and philosophy. Their bodies had evolved to store and purify water, making them incredibly valuable to other species who wanted to exploit that biological advantage. Kyra drew pictures of Karathi being captured and used as living water filters. Some were dissected to understand their crystalline biology. Others were kept as slaves, their bodies harvested for the minerals that formed naturally in their skin. When her people resisted, the aggressor species declared it genocide. They hunted Karathi across multiple systems, claiming their territories and resources. Warren felt sick watching her drawings. She showed him how she had stowed away on a cargo ship, hidden in a supply container for weeks with almost no food or water. The ship had stopped at Redstone Mesa for routine maintenance. She had slipped out during the crew change, hoping to disappear into the colony. But she had no money, no documentation, no way to buy food or passage elsewhere. She had wandered the outskirts until her body finally gave out at Warren's door. "Why didn't you go to colony security?" Warren asked, knowing she would not understand but needing to say it. He drew official-looking figures with badges. Kyra's reaction was immediate and violent. She drew those same figures handing Karathi over to the aggressive species. She made slashing motions across the drawing. Betrayal. Collaboration. Colony officials were turning refugees in for bounties. Warren sat back processing this. The colony government was supposed to be neutral, but money could corrupt anything. If someone was paying good credits for Karathi refugees, there would always be people willing to collect. "You're safe here," Warren said firmly. He pointed at himself, then at her, then at the habitat. He drew a circle around them and shook his head at the official figures. "I won't tell them." Kyra studied his face for a long time. Then she did something that surprised him. She reached out slowly and placed her hand over his. Her skin was warm and had a strange texture, smooth but with tiny facets like crystal. She spoke a phrase in her language, musical and solemn. Warren did not know the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you. Trust." A promise acknowledged. That evening, as Warren prepared their dinner, Kyra came to the kitchen area. She had been moving more confidently as food and rest restored her strength. She pointed at the food preparation and made questioning gestures. Warren showed her how the ration heater worked, how to mix the protein powder with water. She watched intently, then tried it herself under his guidance. When they sat down to eat together, Kyra spoke his name clearly. "Warren." Then she pointed at herself. "Kyra." She made a gesture that brought their hands together, palm to palm. "Warren and Kyra." Warren smiled and repeated the gesture. "Warren and Kyra." It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Not quite friendship yet, but the foundation of it. Two beings from different worlds, thrown together by chance and cruelty, finding common ground in the simplest of things. Food, shelter, communication, trust. Outside, the colony continued its daily routines, unaware of the alien woman hiding in Warren's habitat. Unaware of the bond forming between human and Karathi. For now they were safe. For now that was enough. Warren woke to the sound of alarms blaring through his habitat. He bolted upright, his heart racing as red warning lights flashed across the walls. Kyra was already awake, pressed against the far wall with her crystalline skin pulsing with anxious colors. "It's okay," Warren said quickly, though he felt far from okay himself. He rushed to the control panel and read the display. His stomach dropped. No. The water reclamation system had failed. The readout showed a complete shutdown of the filtration cycle. Out here on the colony's edge, Warren's habitat was self-sufficient by necessity. The central water supply did not reach this far. If his system was down, he had maybe 3 days of reserve water before things became critical. Warren grabbed his toolkit and headed to the utility room where the reclamation equipment hummed and gurgled behind protective panels. Kyra followed at a distance, watching as he opened the access panels and stared at the maze of pipes, filters, and electronic components inside. The problem was immediately obvious. A circuit board had burned out, leaving scorch marks across its surface. Warren pulled it free and examined it under the light. The damage was extensive. He had spare parts, but this particular board was complex. If he made a mistake installing the replacement, he could damage the entire system. His hands were sweating as he retrieved the spare board from storage. Kyra had moved closer, peering over his shoulder at the exposed machinery. She made a questioning sound, and Warren realized she wanted to understand what was wrong. He pointed at the burned board, then at the replacement. "Broken. Need to fix." He gestured at the tangle of wires and connections. But it's complicated. One wrong connection and everything fails. Kyra leaned in closer, her large eyes scanning the machinery with intense focus. Then she did something Warren did not expect. She reached out toward the equipment, her hand hovering inches above the components. Her crystalline skin began to glow faintly, and Warren saw patterns of light moving beneath the surface like circuits firing. "What are you doing?" Warren asked, fascinated. Kyra's eyes were half closed in concentration. She moved her hands slowly across different parts of the system, not touching anything but seeming to sense something Warren could not see. She paused over certain areas, her skin flickering more brightly. Then she pointed decisively at a cluster of wires near the power supply. Warren looked where she indicated. "That section? You think the problem is there too?" Kyra nodded firmly. She made a gesture like something flowing then stopping. "A blockage or break in the flow." Warren grabbed his scanner and checked the area Kyra had pointed to. His eyes widened. She was right. There was a secondary problem he had missed, a damaged relay that would have caused the new board to fail immediately. If he had installed the replacement without finding this, he would have wasted his only spare part. "How did you know that?" Warren asked, amazed. Kyra placed her hand over her eyes, then made a gesture like waves emanating outward. She tapped her crystalline skin, making it chime softly. Warren understood. "You can sense the electrical fields. Like echolocation but for electricity." He laughed in disbelief. "That's incredible." With Kyra's help, Warren identified 3 separate problems in the system. She guided his hands to each damaged component, her ability to sense electromagnetic fields making her better than any scanner. Warren repaired each issue carefully, checking with Kyra before moving to the next step. She watched his every move, learning how human technology worked. When he finally installed the replacement board and reconnected everything, Warren held his breath and powered the system back on. For a moment nothing happened. Then the familiar hum of the reclamation cycle filled the room. Water began flowing through the pipes again. The warning lights switched from red to green. Warren let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "We did it." Kyra's skin burst into bright, warm colors, rippling with what could only be joy. She touched the pipes gently, feeling the water moving through them. Over the next few days, Warren discovered more ways Kyra's biology was uniquely suited to desert survival. When he mentioned that the habitat's water reserves were lower than normal due to the breakdown, Kyra gestured for him to bring her a container of the gray water waiting to be processed. Warren watched in amazement as she placed her hands around the container. Her crystalline structure began to glow, and the murky water inside slowly cleared. Sediment settled to the bottom, and impurities seemed to crystallize and separate out. When she removed her hands, the water was cleaner than his mechanical filters could make it. Not perfect, but drinkable in an emergency. "Your body is a natural filter," Warren said, shaking his head in wonder. "That's why they hunt your people. This ability could solve water problems on a dozen worlds." Kyra's colors dimmed at the reminder. She nodded sadly. Her gift had become her people's curse. But she had other knowledge too. Using drawings and gestures, Kyra showed Warren techniques from her homeworld. She taught him how to identify moisture in the air using temperature changes, something her people did naturally but humans could learn to approximate. She showed him how to position containers to maximize condensation collection during the cold desert nights. She drew diagrams of plants from her world and pointed to similar species growing wild near the habitat, indicating which ones stored water in their roots. Warren had lived on Redstone Mesa for 2 years and thought he knew desert survival. Kyra had lived her entire life on a harsher desert world. She knew things no human book had taught him. One evening, as they worked together to optimize the habitat's environmental systems using her suggestions, Warren realized something important. He had thought he was saving Kyra by taking her in, feeding her, protecting her. But in the past week, she had saved his water system, improved his resource efficiency, and taught him survival skills that could keep him alive if systems failed again. "You're not a burden," Warren said aloud. Kyra looked at him questioningly. He pointed at himself, then at her, then at the habitat functioning smoothly around them. He made a gesture of 2 things supporting each other, balanced and equal. Kyra seemed to understand. Her skin glowed with warm golden tones. She pointed at Warren, then at herself, then placed her hands together palm to palm in that gesture of partnership she had shown him before. They were not savior and refugee anymore. They were 2 survivors helping each other stay alive. Warren had given her shelter and food. Kyra had given him skills and knowledge. Together they were stronger than either could be alone. That night, Warren marked the water reclamation repair in his log. He noted Kyra's electromagnetic sense and her natural filtration ability. Then he added a personal note. Found a partner today. Not sure what comes next, but we'll figure it out together. Warren was performing routine maintenance on his solar panels when he noticed the vehicle approaching across the desert. It was not a colony transport. The design was sleeker, more aggressive, with armor plating that caught the sunlight. A private ship. His stomach tightened with instinct that something was wrong. He climbed down from the roof and went inside quickly. Kyra was in the main room, practicing English words from the teaching program Warren had set up for her. She looked up when he entered, immediately sensing his tension. Someone's coming, Warren said. He pointed outside, then made a walking gesture with his fingers. Stay hidden. Don't make any sound. Kyra's crystalline skin shifted to dark, muted colors. She understood danger. She moved quickly to the storage room where Warren had prepared a hiding spot behind stacked supply crates. He had hoped they would never need it. Warren forced himself to breathe normally and went back outside. The vehicle had stopped 50 meters from his habitat. A man climbed out, tall and heavily built, wearing combat gear that had seen real use. He had a scanner in one hand and a weapon holstered at his hip. His face was scarred and his eyes were cold as he approached. Help you with something? Warren called out, keeping his voice casual. The man stopped a few meters away and smiled without warmth. Maybe. Name's Garrett. I'm doing some work for a client, tracking down stolen property. Don't know anything about stolen property, Warren said. I'm just a maintenance tech. Live alone, keep to myself. Garrett pulled out a data pad and showed Warren an image. It was a Karathi, not Kyra, but similar enough that Warren's heart skipped. Looking for one of these. They're refugees from a legal salvage operation. My client has rights to recover them. One was spotted in this sector 3 weeks ago. You seen anything like this? Warren forced himself to look at the image calmly. No. Haven't seen any aliens out here except the usual traders who come through the colony hub. That's 15 kilometers from here. Garrett studied Warren's face, his expression unreadable. Mind if I take a look around? Won't take long. Every instinct screamed at Warren to refuse, but that would raise suspicion. Sure, I guess. Don't have much to see. Garrett activated his scanner and began walking a slow circle around the habitat. Warren's pulse hammered in his ears. The scanner would pick up heat signatures, biological readings. If Kyra was too close to the walls, if the storage room was not shielded enough. The bounty hunter paused near the eastern wall, where the storage room was located. He studied his scanner, frowning. Warren's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You got livestock? Garrett asked. I'm reading a secondary heat signature inside. Environmental systems, Warren said quickly. The climate control generates heat pockets. Old equipment, not well balanced. Garrett looked at him for a long moment. Then he walked to the door. Let's take a look inside. Warren had no choice. He opened the door and let Garrett enter. The bounty hunter moved through the habitat slowly, scanner in hand, checking each room. Warren followed, his mind racing through scenarios. If Garrett found Kyra, Warren could try to fight, but the man was armed and trained. If Warren let her be taken, he would never forgive himself. Garrett reached the storage room and opened the door. He swept the scanner across the space, and Warren saw the reading spike near where Kyra was hidden. The bounty hunter took a step inside. Wait, Warren said. I need to tell you something. Garrett turned, his hand moving to his weapon. Yeah. Warren took a breath. I did see a Karathi. About 2 weeks ago. She was headed north toward the canyon systems. Looked in bad shape. I gave her some water and rations and she moved on. Didn't think much of it. It was a gamble. Pointing Garrett away from the habitat, giving him a false trail. The bounty hunter's eyes narrowed. North? The canyons are 100 kilometers of dead-end terrain. I just told you what I saw, Warren said. She asked for help, I helped. That's all. Garrett stared at him for another long moment. Then he nodded slowly and backed out of the storage room. If you're lying to me, I'll find out. And I'll be back. Not lying, Warren said, keeping his voice steady. Just trying to help. The bounty hunter left without another word. Warren watched through the window as the vehicle drove away, heading north toward the canyons. Only when it disappeared over the horizon did Warren allow himself to breathe. Kyra emerged from hiding, her skin pulsing with dark, frightened colors. She had heard everything. She pointed at Warren, then at the door where Garrett had left, then made a cutting gesture across her throat. He would have hurt you, Warren agreed. We need to be more careful. But over the next 3 days, Warren saw signs that Garrett was still searching the area. Vehicle tracks in new locations. Observation drones passing overhead. The bounty hunter had not believed Warren's story completely. He was being thorough, checking everywhere before moving to the canyons. On the fourth morning, Warren found a tracking device attached to his vehicle. His blood ran cold. Garrett was watching him, waiting to see if he would lead the hunter to Kyra. Warren went inside and found Kyra studying human language on the data pad. She looked up and he knew his face showed the fear he felt. He pointed at her, then at himself, then made a running gesture. "We have to leave. No. It's not safe here anymore." Kyra's skin flickered through several colors as she processed this. Then she stood and pointed at herself, then at the door. She made a gesture of going alone, pushing Warren back. She was telling him to stay, that she would leave without him. "No," Warren said firmly. He pointed at himself and her together, making the partnership gesture she had taught him. "We go together." Kyra shook her head frantically. She drew quickly on the data pad, showing the bounty hunter finding Warren, hurting him. She was trying to protect him by leaving. Warren took the stylus from her hand and drew two figures running side by side. Then he spoke slowly, making sure she understood each word. "Humans don't leave family behind. You're family now. We go together or not at all." Tears formed in Kyra's large eyes, though Warren had not known her species could cry. She placed both hands over her heart, then reached out and touched his chest in the same place. A gesture of deep connection. They packed quickly. Warren took food, water, medical supplies, navigation equipment. Kyra gathered the few possessions she had. Within an hour they slipped out of the habitat and into the desert, heading east away from both the colony and the canyons. Behind them, Warren's habitat sat empty. Ahead lay the Badlands, a harsh region even experienced colonists avoided. But together, with Kyra's desert knowledge and Warren's equipment, they had a chance. The cost of kindness had become the cost of everything Warren owned. But as they walked into the unknown, he knew he had made the right choice. The Badlands were worse than Warren had imagined. Jagged rock formations rose from the sand like broken teeth, and the temperature swung wildly between scorching days and freezing nights. They walked for 2 days, rationing water carefully, before finding shelter in a narrow canyon. Warren checked his navigation device while Kyra examined the rock walls around them. She moved along the canyon, her hands hovering over the stone, her crystalline skin glowing faintly. She was sensing something with that electromagnetic ability of hers. She stopped suddenly and made an excited sound. Warren hurried over. Kyra pointed at what looked like natural cracks in the rock face, but when Warren looked closer he saw they were too regular, too intentional. Someone had carved these marks. "Is this Karathi?" Warren asked. Kyra nodded vigorously. She traced the symbols with her fingers, her skin pulsing with rapid colors. Then she grabbed Warren's hand and pulled him deeper into the canyon. The marks appeared again on other rocks, forming a trail. They were being led somewhere. The canyon narrowed until they had to walk single file. Then it opened into a wider space where the rock walls curved inward, creating a natural shelter. And there, hidden in the shadows, was an entrance to a cave system. Kyra called out in her language, her voice echoing off the stone. For a moment nothing happened. Then figures emerged from the cave entrance. 3 Karathi, their crystalline skin gleaming in the dim light. They were thin like Kyra had been, but alive and moving. The reunion was immediate and emotional. The Karathi surrounded Kyra, touching her face and arms, speaking rapidly in their musical language. Kyra gestured back to Warren, and all 3 Karathi turned to look at him with those large alien eyes. One of them, taller than the others with deep blue tones in their crystalline skin, approached Warren carefully. They spoke in broken English. You help her?" "Yes," Warren said. "She needed help. I gave it." The tall Karathi studied Warren for a long moment. Then they placed their hand over their heart in that gesture Warren now recognized as deep respect. "Thank you. Humans, not all same." They led Warren and Kyra into the cave system. Inside, Warren found a hidden refuge. 15 more Karathi lived here, survivors who had escaped the genocide and found each other through those symbols carved in stone. They had been hiding for months, surviving on desert plants and water they could purify with their bodies. The Karathi had salvaged equipment from abandoned mining operations in the Badlands. Warren saw communication devices, primitive but functional. One of the Karathi, who introduced herself with a name that sounded like flowing water, explained in halting English that they had been trying to contact sympathetic groups off-world. "We need safe passage," she said. "But colony officials, they sell us to hunters." Warren looked at the frightened refugees and made a decision. "I know someone. A friend who works in the colony administration. She's honest. Let me try to contact her. It took 3 days of careful, encrypted messages before Warren connected with his friend Nicole. She worked in the humanitarian aid department and had always been vocal about refugee rights. When Warren explained the situation, leaving out exact locations, Nicole was horrified but determined to help. She connected Warren with an underground network of sympathetic officials and off-world advocates who worked to protect refugees. Over the next week, Warren helped coordinate between the Karathi and these allies. Plans were made carefully. Transport would arrive in secret. The Karathi would be relocated to a sanctuary world where their rights would be protected by treaty. But there was another problem. Garrett was still searching the area. Nicole reported that bounty hunters had increased their activity around Redstone Mesa. They knew refugees were hiding nearby. Warren worked with the Karathi to set up defenses around the cave entrance. Early warning systems using scavenged sensors. Escape routes mapped through the deeper tunnels. They prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. The transport ship arrived on a moonless night, landing in a flat area 3 kilometers from the caves. The Karathi gathered their few possessions, preparing to leave the planet that had become their prison. There was nervousness but also hope in their crystalline faces. Kyra stood apart from the others looking at Warren. Her skin showed colors he had never seen before, complex patterns that seemed to war between joy and sadness. Warren understood. You have to go with them. It's not safe here. Kyra nodded, but her colors darkened. She reached into a small pouch at her belt and pulled out something that glowed with its own inner light. It was a crystal, perfectly formed, about the size of Warren's thumb. She held it carefully in both hands. The other Karathi nearby gasped. The tall blue one spoke urgently to Kyra in their language, clearly questioning her. Kyra responded firmly, her voice unwavering. She turned back to Warren and pressed the crystal into his hand. It was warm and seemed to pulse gently against his palm. Kyra spoke in English, words she had practiced. Family crystal. Sacred. Given only to true family. Not blood. Chosen. Warren felt the weight of what she was offering. Kyra, I can't. This is too important. You are family, Kyra said firmly. She placed her hand over his heart, then over her own. You saved me. Risked everything. Humans say, actions speak. Your actions say family. The other Karathi approached and touched the crystal in Warren's hand, each one placing their hand over their heart afterward. It was a ritual Warren realized. They were witnessing and accepting this bond. Warren closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its warmth spread through his hand. I won't forget you. I will return, Kyra said. When safe, I will visit. Family visits family. The Karathi boarded the transport. Warren watched from a distance as the ship lifted into the night sky, its engines barely a whisper. When it disappeared among the stars, he felt an emptiness he had not expected. He returned to the colony 3 days later. His habitat was still standing, though Garrett had clearly searched it in his absence. Warren filed a report claiming he had been doing survey work in the eastern sectors. No one questioned him too closely. Life returned to routine, but everything felt different. Warren went to work, came home, ate alone. But now he had the crystal, which he placed in a position of honor on his shelf. It glowed softly in the darkness, a reminder that he was not truly alone. 2 months later, Warren heard a familiar sound at his door. Not desperate knocking this time, but a rhythmic pattern. He opened it to find Kyra standing there, her crystalline skin bright with joy. Behind her stood Nicole and 2 other humans Warren did not recognize. I told you, Kyra said, her English much improved. Family visits family. She came inside and they talked for hours. Kyra told him about the sanctuary world, about Karathi culture, about the other refugees who were rebuilding their lives. She brought gifts, crystalline art pieces made by her people. She brought news that more refugees were being rescued, that the sanctuary network was growing. And she brought something else. A promise that she would return regularly, that the bond they had formed would not end with distance. Warren showed her the improvements he had made to the habitat using her techniques. They cooked dinner together, mixing human and Karathi recipes into something new. They laughed at the strange results and tried again. That night, as Kyra prepared to leave for her temporary quarters in the colony proper, she touched the family crystal on Warren's shelf. You keep it safe. Means you are part of Karathi family now. All Karathi know this symbol. You have refuge anywhere we are. After she left, Warren sat in his habitat and realized it no longer felt empty. The walls held memories now. Laughter and struggle and shared meals. A stranger had collapsed at his door in desperate need, and he had made a simple choice: to help, to care, to not look away. That choice had cost him safety and solitude, but it had given him something far more valuable: family chosen not by blood or species, but by actions and sacrifice. By the simple human capacity to extend kindness even when it was difficult, even when it was dangerous. Warren looked at the crystal glowing softly in the darkness and smiled. His home was no longer a solitary refuge at the edge of civilization. It was a place where family returned, again and again, carrying the bond between human and Karathi across the stars. Some might say he had saved Kyra that night in the storm. But sitting here now, Warren knew the truth. They had saved each other.